Hey y'all, and welcome to my third episode of Intro to Metalsmithing, Basic versus Sweat Soldering. This project will include incorporating both methods. To get started, you'll need a few items. A pickle pot, a jar of water, solder, high, medium, and easy, a soldering surface like solderite or a charcoal block, a third hand, but it's not necessary for this project, a titanium pick, steel tweezers, copper tongs, a butane torch or some other kind of heat source, butane, flux, I use liquid flux, and lastly, ventilation and some kind of mask to protect from fumes. When creating your pickling solution, follow the instructions for your given solution. I use one where I need to mix it with water in order to create the solution itself. And remember, you don't have to get fancy. This is a slow cooker that I got from the grocery store, and inside I have a coffee filter to make it easier for me to remove pieces. And now to prepare for your project, go ahead and set your pickle pot to low or on. As you get more comfortable soldering, you could upgrade from a solderite block to a charcoal block. I also have board like this where you can stick pins in it, or also just in general this turntable style that helps whenever you're soldering to move the piece around and keep the flame moving. Before soldering, one of the things you want to do is prep the surfaces that you're going to solder. You want to make sure they're clean and that you don't have any oils on it, fingerprints, stuff like that. So whenever I'm prepping, I usually just use some sandpaper and really get like a clean surface here. One of the things you could do also is plop it inside of the pickle solution. Go wash it with soap and water, just making sure you have a clean surface before you start soldering. Now that I have prepared the metal plate, I have now put the piece that I want to solder to the plate centered on the metal, and now I'm going to spray some liquid flux onto the piece and prepare my medium solder, because as you can see right here, this solder line was done by hard solder. So when I put medium solder down, it's going to melt at a different temperature so that this solder does not flow. So we went ahead and dried the flux and placed the medium solder up against the joint that we want to solder. And now you heat it. Always keep the flame moving. I like to keep the flame underneath the piece because butane is a dirty flame. If you make the piece dirty quickly, you're not going to get a good flow. If you ever have a point where it's not flowing, turn off the flame and evaluate the situation. And now we have a flow. I put it on top to get the heat to move the solder. Solder moves toward a heat source. So you can see that it flowed because you see a fine silver line. And you want to check that it flowed all the way around. After you're done heating the piece, you want to grab it with some tongs and place it into your quenching solution, which I have some water back here. Now we place it in a pickle solution and let it clean the piece. Okay, so here's an example where my piece started to get dirty. I've already pickled it. I made the mistake of pickling it before showing you. We can see how the solder right here started to pool up. It didn't want to move. I even had solder flow all the way up to about this point, and you see there's a blank spot here, a pulled spot of solder, and then blank around. To me, that means it had become dirty somewhere in between here and over here. So I've already put new flux on it. I've already put it in the pickle pot. And so now I'm not adding any more solder, but I'm going to heat the piece to see if it's clean now and if we can actually get this to flow. What probably happened is I brought my flame up too high. You can kind of see how I brought it up a little bit, and you already saw some of that darkness beginning. So you just want to heat the piece up and see if you can get that solder that's already there to flow. I'm adding a little bit more heat. You can see it coming to temperature as it starts to turn white. Let's see if we can get this solder to flow. Alright, I'm starting to see it flow. Yep, right there, you see it connect, and then we bring it up, and we just try to connect the rest of these joints. I'm seeing solder flow all the way around. While that's in the pickle, I'm going to go ahead and prepare our little pumpkin that's going to go onto the back of the ghost pendant. And I'm going to prep this for a sweat solder. So for something like this, you just place the sandpaper down and just run it across. You just want to make sure that's a nice clean surface. Again, if you'd like, you could place it in the pickle pot as well so it's completely clean, and wash it. If it's dirty, you'll have issues with the solder flowing to those dirty spots. A quick rule about pickle pots: you don't ever want to use steel tongs like these. You want to use copper tongs, because whatever copper is inside, if you place the steel tongs inside, it will cause a reaction and plate your sterling silver piece with copper. So to begin a sweat solder, I like to do it where I actually place the solder on the object that I want to solder onto the plate. So I do it on the smaller piece and then place the smaller piece on the bigger piece that I want to solder down onto. So I went ahead and just dried the flux. I'm placing easy solder onto the piece. Bear with me here. And then a small little piece on the actual cat. Okay, now that we have our solder on, I'm going to do a low flame, and I'm going to lightly heat this until the solder flows on the small piece. Remember to keep moving the flame. You don't want to accidentally melt anything. Adding a little bit more heat. And you see some flowing right there. Let's flow on the cat. Flow on the rest of the pumpkin. Alright. Now that I got the solder to flow, I'm going to place this onto the larger piece. So here's the larger piece in question. I'm going to place the piece that I want to sweat solder on, And then I make sure to place it exactly where I need it. Don't be discouraged if it's not quite flat. Some people like to sand it so that it's flat. Okay, so let's go ahead and heat it until it glows. Remember to move the flame, because you're also wanting to heat both at the same temperature. You can see my pumpkin is starting to flatten out. Sometimes you need to, all right, I see some flowing, and done. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode of Intro to Metalsmithing. Follow and subscribe for more.